Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel in my Budgeting Basics series. Today we're talking about something that changed my financial life completely: building an emergency fund. If you've ever faced an unexpected expense that threw your finances into chaos, this video is for you. Let's dive in. So, life happens to all of us. Cars break down, people get sick, jobs are lost, and homes need repairs. These unexpected expenses can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars, money that most Americans simply don't have ready to go. In fact, studies show that nearly 40% of Americans couldn't even cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. That's a really scary position to be in, but it doesn't have to be your reality. So, why do we need an emergency fund? First, it prevents you from going into high interest debt when emergencies happen, and they will. That $800 car repair could end up costing you $1,000 or more if you put it on a credit card and paid it off slowly. Second, it dramatically reduces financial stress. Instead of panicking about how to pay for an emergency, you can focus on dealing with the situation itself. Third, it gives you time to make better decisions. When you're desperate for money, you often have to make choices you later will regret or wouldn't have made in the first place at all. And finally, an emergency fund creates stability during these times, like during a job loss or an economic downturn. I personally experienced this when I had my first job. I had a very serious car repair that needed to be done, and it was going to cost $1,000. I needed the car to get to work, but I didn't have any funds set aside for it. So I used a little bit of the savings that I had, and the rest I put on credit card. And I couldn't pay it off in full. It took me almost a year to pay it all off. So not only did I learn my lesson, that experience proved to me that emergency funds aren't just nice to have, they're essential. I recommend building your emergency fund in 3 stages because you got to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. So, stage one is your starter emergency fund of $1,000. This is your immediate goal if you're just beginning and you don't already have this step done. It's enough to cover many common emergencies without going into debt. Stage two is your basic emergency fund. You do this after you've made the save for $1,000. It covers 3 months of essential expenses, provides a solid cushion for larger emergencies. And finally, stage three is your complete emergency fund, covering 6+ months of expenses. This is your ultimate goal, providing protection for even major disruptions like job loss. The stage that's right for you depends on your personal situation, though. And one caveat note: it is smarter to have a larger fund if you have variable income or are worried about an impending recession. But before we go any further, let's clarify what actually counts as an emergency. Your emergency fund is for unexpected, necessary expenses like medical bills, major car home repairs, job loss, or unplanned travel for family emergencies. It's not for planned expenses like holidays or vacations, even if you forgot to budget for them. It's not for taking advantage of any sales or deals that you find. It's not for regular maintenance that should be part of your budget. And it's definitely not for wants versus needs. I recommend having a separate sinking fund for those predictable but irregular expenses, which we'll cover in another video. So, how much should you save? Start by listing your essential monthly expenses like housing, food, utilities, transportation, insurance, minimum debt payments, and other necessities. Don't include things like dining out, entertainment, or other discretionary spending on hobbies, for example. Multiply that number by your target months, 3 to 6, depending on your situation. If you have a stable job in a growing industry, 3 months might be sufficient. If you're self employed or have a regular income, aim for the 6+ months. Also consider adding a buffer for high deductible insurance. If your health insurance has a $3,000 deductible, you might want to add that amount to your fund. So, your emergency fund needs to be kept where, right? You've saved this money, where are you keeping it? It needs to meet 4 key requirements. It must be liquid, and that means that it's easily accessible without penalties or delays. It should be separate from your checking account to avoid temptation. It needs to be low or no risk. This isn't money to invest in the stock market. It should be FDIC or NCUA insured for protection. The FDIC covers banks and NCUA covers credit unions, just so you know. The best options include high yield savings accounts, money market accounts, cash management accounts, and sometimes, if you do it right, T-bills. These typically offer higher interest than traditional savings account while keeping your money safe and accessible. I personally use Discover and Capital One for my high yield savings accounts because their rates are good and they don't bounce them around as much as other institutions might, where they offer you a really high rate and then a month, 2 months later, they've lowered it down to the national average. But there are many good options available. So you need to do what's right for you and your family. Now, let's talk about how to actually build your fund. Strategy 1 is setting up automatic transfers, the most effective approach for most people. Setting up recurring transfers from your checking account to your emergency fund or on payday. Start whatever you can afford, even if it's just $25 a paycheck. The key is consistency and also not to touch that money unless it's an emergency. Gradually increase the amount over time, especially when you start receiving pay raises or if you've paid off a debt. This pay yourself first approach ensures your emergency fund grows steadily without requiring constant willpower to make it happen. But there's other strategies. Strategy 2, it's leveraging windfalls and any extra money that you get. Commit to putting a portion of any unexpected money towards your emergency fund. This would include things like a tax refund, a work bonus, cash gifts, side hustle income, and rebates or cashback rewards. Even allocating just 50% of these windfalls to your emergency fund can accelerate your progress significantly. When I received my tax refund last year, I put 75% towards my emergency fund and reached my stage 2 goal 3 months earlier than expected. Now, why are you asking I'm at stage 2 again? It's because I had to make a payment out to fix something on the house, and it put us down about a month. So we had to re-put money into the account. We'll go over that more later in detail, however. Strategy 3 involves involves temporary spending reduction, to boost your savings rate. So you can consider something like a 30-day spending freeze in 1 or 2 categories, ones that are wants, not needs, like dining out, clothing, or entertainment. Implement meal planning to reduce costs, which is typically where most households can find quick savings. Or temporarily pause subscriptions and redirect your money into that fund. You might also consider selling unused items around your house on places like Facebook Marketplace or eBay. Most of us have hundreds or even thousands of dollars worth of stuff we never use. So those are easy things to do. Strategy 4 is temporarily boosting your income, specifically for your emergency fund. So this would be something like working overtime, extra shifts if your job has it, or maybe looking at a side gig like food delivery, rideshare, pet sitting, babysitting, anything that could generate extra cash without a huge time commitment. Freelance work in your area of expertise often pays well for your time, so it's something to think about. Look for cash paying opportunities in your community, like house sitting, yard work, or helping with events. The key is treating this as temporary extra effort with a specific goal in mind. So this isn't a long-term plan. This is to get the ball rolling on your emergency fund. Now, once you've built your emergency fund, maintaining it is critical. And that's what happened to me, where I had to redo my emergency fund. If you need to use your funds, make replenishing it your top priority before returning to your other goals. Review your fund size annually or whenever your life circumstances change. Think a new baby, a new house, or a new job, which might mean you need a larger cushion. Also consider the impact of inflation over time. The $15,000 emergency fund that covers 6 months of expenses today might not cover 6 months in 5 years. That's why you have to commonly reassess this. Well, let me address some common questions about emergency funds. First, should I save or pay off debt first? This is very easy. If you have high interest debt, build your stage 1 fund of $1,000 first, so you have a cushion, and then focus on the debt. Then return to building your emergency fund. Okay? Can I invest my emergency fund? Okay. Generally, no. Your emergency fund should not be at risk of market fluctuations. You don't want to put it in the stock market. You don't know if you'll have the same amount of money. You might have more, you might have significantly less. The point of these funds is that you have them available when you need them. However, once you have a very robust fund, say 9 months, you might consider keeping a portion in slightly higher yield options. What if I have a regular income? Well, I have that, and I can tell you, you likely need a larger emergency fund. Aiming for 9 to 12 months of expenses to account for that income volatility is a very smart plan. Or if you feel like there might be a recession coming, having that amount of money where you think it might be hard to find another job will also help. Okay. Should couples have separate funds? That really depends on your financial setup. Joint funds do work well for most couples, but in some cases, individual funds make more sense. Are your finances separate mainly? Then you need to have separate accounts. If you are paying into a pool, then maybe you need one joint account, and that needs to be part of the pool of the cost that you're sharing based on whatever strategy you have set up as a couple. So let me share a few real life examples of how emergency funds have saved the day. I have a friend who had started a new job. The salary was good, the hours were good, but she was the first in. The company had a downturn. They lost a really large client, and so she ended up being the first out. It was, she did nothing wrong. There was no fault on her part. The company just had to downsize very quickly, and that was the easiest choice. But she had a 6-month emergency fund. So she was able to not stress about paying her bills while she found another job. And she found one 3 months later, so the funds lasted. But she wasn't under the stress of trying to figure out how to pay for her life day to day. It made a huge difference in her being able to focus on finding a new job versus figuring out how she was going to put food on the table. Now, my parents had a medical emergency. We were traveling in Mexico, and we had a slip and fall and an ankle fracture. And healthcare didn't cover it where we were located because we're in a foreign country, and we didn't buy health insurance because we were there for such a short trip. Now, obviously, in hindsight, we wish we had done that. He needed surgery. And without these funds in the emergency fund, we would have been out $5,000. I mean, we would have had to put it on a credit card, and who knows how long it would have taken us to pay. So we were able to cover the emergency, work on getting him better, and getting him home. That emergency fund literally saved the day. And now on to me. Last year, we needed a new roof thanks to a storm. The insurance company didn't cover 100% based on what our policy was, but we had a nice, hefty 7 month emergency fund, we'll say. And whatever was left over, we didn't fret about because we used those funds to cover that home repair. You can't sleep in a house without a roof. So without those funds, I would have had to max out all my credit cards, and who knows what would have happened. I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. This made me have serious peace of mind. So these aren't hypothetical scenarios. They're real situations that I and family members and friends have gone through, where having money set aside made all the difference. So, are you ready to start your emergency fund? Here are your action steps. Set your stage 1 goal of $1,000. Open a separate high yield savings account today. Schedule your first automatic transfer, even if it's small. I don't care if it's $10, just start. Remember, building financial security happens one step at a time. Even $500 saved is infinitely better than zero. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more practical financial advice. Drop a comment letting me know which stage of emergency fund you're working toward. Next week, I'll be sharing strategies for budgeting for irregular expenses with sinking funds, the perfect complement to your emergency fund. See you then.